All right. Hi, welcome everyone. We're thrilled to have Jess McGlothlin with us today. Jess is an acclaimed adventure photographer, writer, and safety expert. We're calling her an expert whose work has taken her around the globe. With years of experience in the field, she's become a trusted voice in adventure travel. Today, Jess is going to be sharing her insider knowledge on how to stay safe and travel smart. She's going to be covering things from essential safety practices to recommendations for all different types of travelers.
Okay,
Just a quick reminder, this session is being recorded
that
and will
works.
be available on the Travel Goods Hub and on our YouTube channel for replay. So if you need to come back to these insights, you can whenever you need them. We'll
Good.
also have a quick Q&A at the end, so drop your questions in the chat at any time or just save them for the discussion. I'm turning it over to you, Jess.
So as Judy said, my name is Jess McGlothlin. I'm a now 15 years photographer and writer in the outdoor industry, largely in fly fishing, which is kind of a funny niche. It's been a very good one for me. It's taken me all over the world to places I never would have dreamed of going, and caught some really fun fish along the way. A lot of these places are not easy to travel to, either logistically or just practically. This trip in Bolivia in this photo was about 3.5 or 4 days to get into this location. So I've been able to learn a lot about the gear and just some tips and tricks to make that travel a bit easier. Feel free to reach out. As Judy said, we'll have a Q&A at the end. But if you have any questions afterwards that come to mind, this is all my contact info. Feel free to shoot me a note. All right, so today we're going to cover a little bit about choosing your destination, choosing your gear. We're all here at the Travel Goods Association. How to pack it, customs and immigration, everyone's favorite, place safety, people safety, and then the fun. There's really no point in doing any of this unless you're having fun, right? Even though it's work for many of us. And then again, open Q&A. So again, why do we travel? I think everyone has a different reason that we travel. For me, it's work. 95% of my travel is work-related travel. That said, this is a friend who's a fishing guide in the Bolivian Amazon. We were doing a transfer day, and he's got his man purse with his bag and a sat phone, and we still have ways to make the work travel fun. Hopefully, many of you are traveling just for joy, for the pleasure of it. But if you're not, there are still ways to make some work travel entertaining as well. And I think everyone's reasons do change with like our life seasons as well. I know my travel's changed quite a bit over the 15 years I've been doing this as a career. So where are we going? How to kind of choose your next trip. A lot of people start close to home. This is in the Absaroka-Beartooth Wilderness. It's a couple-hour drive from me here in Montana. And it's ironically one of my most memorable trips to date. It was a backcountry horsepacking trip where we went in and of course we're fishing, as most trips are. But this, compared to many of my other trips, was a really short trip, right? Easy to get there, not a problem. So it doesn't need to be far and exotic. Gear for me, again, we're here talking about gear as well, is always not a concern, but a thought. This is some friends who are fishing guides toting my Pelican case around there. You can see that brown box with all the camera gear. As a photographer, I never travel light, and that does have to factor in a little bit to places. If I'm going to places like this fishing camp in Alaska, it's hard to see there, but the guys are walking on like boardwalks suspended over the marsh. So it's always gear factors into my locations a little bit, A, on how I can get it into the country, and then B, how I can then manage gear when I'm in the country. Again, traveling where you want to go, a lot of folks I work with, I do hosted trips as well as like photography travel, are really worried about visas, immigration, paperwork, that kind of thing. There are a lot of different ways to slice that, a lot of professionals out there who can help you manage that. And the internet's an amazing resource. Most of my research is done online, a little digging, and you can typically find what you need. And then solo versus group travel. This is Florence, Italy. This is, I think, the sole non-work trip I've taken as a photographer. It turned into a work trip once I got there. But many people travel in groups, right? Humans like to travel in packs. I do a lot of hosted trips. All my other travel is done solo. And for some people, solo travel is really a threatening thing or a worrying prospect. And so all the tips we're going to run over today are geared for both solo and group travelers, more so almost for solo in several ways. So again, kind of reflecting, starting small. If you're new to travel, or even if you travel a lot for work and need a break, don't underestimate the day trips close to home. It's easy to do your research for visas, paperwork, vaccinations, and just places themselves. And then if you're looking into group travel, again, agencies or hosted travel, they're great if you're nervous about going to a destination for the first time. This destination in the photo, this is a fishing lodge in the Bolivian Amazon. It's only operated in partnership with a local tribe. And that local tribe has an agreement with one guy in this whole area who can legally guide there and fish there. And so there's no way I, as an individual in the US, sitting in Montana, would be able to have that connection. But being able to work with lodges who have these developed programs can open doors that might not otherwise be open to us. All right, talking about gear. Again, I talked about in Alaska, that slide prior. For me, managing gear in different countries and different locations is always interesting because I have the photo gear. For a lot of us, traveling without photo gear, without fishing gear, it still factors in as well. These are two fishing guides in Alaska. You can see there they have on multiple layers, 3 at minimum. They have fishing waders on, but they also have a base layer and a mid layer and a jacket. And layering really is key, whatever climate you're going to. If I leave Montana, where I live, in January, if I'm going to a warm destination, same flying to Belize, I'm not going to need layers when I get to Belize, but what happens if I get stuck in the airport in Montana or have to drive back? So I'm always really careful about layering myself, and always having an option like a wrap or a jacket or something for airports. I've spent way too many nights on airport floors in different countries over the years, and that jacket comes in clutch. Um, Again, just being comfortable with what activities you're doing. Adventure travel, we're seeing trend a lot, both in the US and abroad. This is that Absaroka Beartooth Wilderness, again in Montana. And this is not a trip you want to show up to in shorts and flip-flops, right? So being cognizant of what kind of gear your trip is going to require and being able to enjoy the trip much better if you're comfortable, if you come prepared. And that, again, research is very easy to do online. Talking about layers, again, most of my travel is done through the fishing lens. This is a photo, I'm actually in 2 of these. A photo of me in southern Argentina with a brown trout. I had 5 layers on, I think. Very windy, cold day, and we're obviously wet, right? We're in and out of the water a lot. So being able to have layers to change in and out of is key. That was also in the midst of a 3-month-long client trip. So I couldn't pack a ton of volume. So being able to launder on the road, take care of my clothes on the road, patch clothes on the road is key there. The photo on your top right is swimming rivers in the Bolivian Amazon. Again, I had to have gear where we could, like, if we can't hike through the jungle and we have to swim upstream on the river, my gear needs to hold up to that. And then the photo on the bottom is a group of fishing guides in Argentina. Again, fishing guides, bless their hearts, are a great example of great layering practices because these guys are out in all conditions all the time, having to perform and having to take care of people. And again, the basics. I'm a big proponent of travel safety as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later. These 3 objects that look kind of funny. This was in that same place in Bolivia, and this was kind of the trifecta to stay well after we came in from a day of work. Is like an icy cold fruit drink, bug spray. The bugs are epic in places there. And then like a foot powder to help dry your feet out because you've been standing in water all day. And a week of that in the jungle at 110-degree heat, which we had, is not great for your skin. You can imagine stuff gets pretty funky. So this was stuff, luckily I had brought 2 of the 3. They supplied the fruit drink, and we ended up bartering that foot powder around camp. I could have sold hits off that bottle of powder very easily to different people. Having a few little luxuries can make a big difference when you're packing for a trip. So go ahead, just a quick review. Check the climate before you go to a place. Weather changes. A lot of places weather forecasts are not good, but check historic averages. I always look at like the last couple years and just see if I can see a trend there. Layering, as we talked about, is king, especially if you're going for multiple climates. And then, as we'll discuss in this next section, there's all kinds of packing tools and pieces available on the market today. A lot of us have seen them at the trade show that help make us, they let us really pack those different layers and pieces much more effectively. And hence we head into how to pack it. So a lot of luggage, in my mind, kind of the adventure travel falls into hard-sided and soft-sided luggage. Here, this is a small atoll in French Polynesia on the left. You can see there's a mix of both. There are several pelican cases in there. There's some harder luggage underneath, but most of the softer bags, like the big luggage bags, are going to be soft duffels. That's because we came in on a boat and a small airplane and could not fit a big hard-sided roller. So that's something I always talk with people about on trips is like, if we're in a small plane or a helicopter or a boat, having soft side luggage is a huge benefit. It also can save you weight, often like 10 pounds if you're on a weight allowance. Um, Again, I'm a bit of a special case. This is kind of my normal loadout for a trip for camera gear. So I'm often carrying, all the fishing gear, my personal gear, plus an underwater housing. There's a drone in the bag as well, 2 or 3 cameras. So I'm the extreme case of packing hopeful efficiency. It depends on the trip. But hopefully most of you will have an easier time packing for your trip than I do for most of mine. This has become kind of my standard loadout. So this Yeti pack, it's a waterproof bag. I can actually swim in it. That photo of swimming in the Bolivian River several slides back was actually, I had this pack on me. So this pack's been submerged. It's swum on at least 5 continents, actually. And I just slipped a camera like divider, a camera bag insertion or insert from an actual camera company into this bag and ended up padding it and stitching it a little bit so it's a bit more padded. What I really like about this bag for not only cameras, but like passport and expensive gear, it's really hard for someone to get in there. Sometimes frustratingly hard for me to get in there. If any of you have ever played with waterproof zippers, you have to haul on it. It's a process of like, hold it and yank it open. That's part of what keeps it waterproof. But if I have that bag on my back and I'm walking through a city street and someone wants to slip that zipper open and steal something, I'm going to feel it because they're not going to do that easily. So this has been an awesome bag. If I'm in an airport or any kind of public space, anything in that little front pouch gets put inside the main bag. So it's like there's nothing people can access quickly. I really love crossbody bags for this as well. If you're in a city, being able to like just sling that bag right in front of you and have it right kind of in your abdomen is a great way to just keep an eye on things. The pelican cases are interesting. Again, hopefully many of you are not traveling with pelicans and a lot of camera gear. If you are, be prepared to be stopped in airports. These always flag in different airports because people know there's something of value inside, right? So that's the bag I tend to guard. Some places I travel to, I just throw everything in the backpack and don't bring the Pelican because it's going to be too much of a target or too logistically challenging. And that's a case by case and a country by country decision. But you can see here on this photo on the right, in this Patagonia rolling duffel, there's a bunch of little bags, right? A bunch of little organizers, like we talked about earlier. I, at least 4 times, have been through airport security and had to completely empty my bag. Several of you, I hope not, but many of you probably have as well, where you get in the customs line and they say, oh, something's strange in here, we need to go dig through it. It's really hard to keep track of everything if you've packed everything loose in the bag. And it's very easy for someone to slip something off that conveyor belt. And so having things packed, kind of compartmentalized, really helps me keep track of it. It helps me stay organized too, but it's just almost a bit of a safety convenience thing as well. Here, this is just a quick shot. This is in Syria. You can see it's that same kit. I've been riding that Pelican case, I think literally the same case for 12 years with some repairs. So take good care of your gear, and it does take care of you. Here on the left, again, you can see all these they're all spread out and open now, but a lot of fishing gear and a lot of smaller bags. This was that 3-month job in Argentina where I was visiting a different lodge every week to do a photo shoot. And I was going from different types of fisheries that require different types of gear. And so I was having to change lines on fly reels and change all my gear over in addition to all my camera gear. And having things compartmentalized made it very easy to just lay it out on the hotel bed, switch it all over, pack it back up again. And then the things I did not need for the fishery I was heading into just got tucked away. They just got kind of hidden on the bottom of the bag until I needed to reach for them again. So it makes it much more efficient. Photo on the right, same Pelican bag. I always travel with the dry bag. It's a little hard to see. That's what that purple bag is. Clothes get wet, shoes get wet, something spills. If I want to bring back a bottle of wine or something from a country, it's really nice to have a dry bag just to roll it up in. Big Ziploc baggies work well also. And then just flying under the radar. This is a pack I brought to, this trip was French Polynesia. But it was not a big heavy duty fishing assignment, and I just wanted to kind of glide in and not look like a working photographer. And so this is a great little shoulder bag. Again, I can sling it in front of me if I need to in an airport and throw a couple cameras in there, good to go. And sometimes this was a trip in Chile where we camped in southern Chile for a week. This was right as COVID was hitting the world. We were talking about, Judy and I were talking about COVID before this call started. This was mid-March 2020. And so while the rest of the world was going into lockdown, we were blissfully unaware camping in Chile and got a call saying, hey, there's one repatriation flight left. You need to get back to a city or else you're stuck in Chile for an indefinite amount of time, which in hindsight would have been the better option. We had empanadas and fish and we were good to go. Great wine. But we ran back and were able to get out. But again, same Pelican case. This is a different dry bag. I was field testing for a company. But again, exact same kit that we've seen through all these different slides in a basically little base camp in Chile. One thing I always recommend people do with luggage, buy the little TSA locks. I love the Pelican brand ones just because they've held up best for me. But a lot of places, this is in Bolivia in a village airstrip, gear's gonna get out of your sight, right? Bags, even commercial airports here in the US, you check your bag and then it goes on the belt and you don't see it again until hopefully your destination. I'm a fan of the TSA locks. If you don't want to do the locks, zip ties can also work too. It's easy for TSA to clip it if they need to get in there. But that extra little margin of safety can be enough deterrence to prevent someone who shouldn't be rifling through your bag. And again, this kind of just runs through what we talked about. Choosing your luggage kind of based on your destination a little bit. Checking in those TSA approved locks. Day pack security, keeping an eye on your gear, how to kind of avoid pickpockets. Crossbody bags are great for that. And fancy isn't always better. I always advise my friends, like invest in the good gear, right? We're all on the gear side of the business here. Invest in the good gear that suits your specific needs and then take care of it. Do maintenance on it if you need to. But you're going to be a lot more comfortable with things that you're familiar with and have used in the past. Customs and immigration. This is about how I feel going through customs and immigration every time. I've done it so many countries over so many years. We all still kind of brace, like my hackles go, my shoulders start climbing. Biggest thing I tell people is to just stay calm, right? At the end of the day, these customs and immigration see so many people come through. This underwater housing has been the bane of my existence going through customs and immigration. If I have this, it's almost guaranteed that I'll be stopped and pulled aside. It's happened very colorfully several times with guns pointed in my direction. They don't know what it is. Different countries respond very differently to the blue plastic box with the dome on it. And so just staying calm and explaining to them what it is. My best tactic for dealing with anything that might cause issues with customs or immigration, especially customs, is having some kind of example of what the item does. So for this underwater housing, I have a whole album on my phone now of underwater photos taken with this through this housing. And so I can show them like, hey, here's how I put it together. Here's how it works. Show them actual photos on my phone. And then you kind of see the light bulb go on of like, oh, this is what it does. This is what it makes. And it's benign, right? There's nothing inherently dangerous about it, but it's just something they haven't seen before. So being able to show people like what this weird blue box does is amazing. And it's same thing if you're traveling with like medication, right? That's a much more common one. Make sure you have the doctor's note and the prescription pill bottle and the label and all these things. It's tempting sometimes to throw prescriptions just in a baggie because we don't want to have these multiple little pill bottles. But drugs in a Ziploc bag with no label look a lot more suspicious than something in a pharmacist's orange bottle. So just being overt about whatever you think may cause a potential problem goes a long way in alleviating that. And don't look suspicious. This was coming out of the Darien Gap in Colombia, a local airport in a small town. And this couple in front of me were American and were very nervous. They were very upset and kind of, again, that like shoulders up, hackles up, looking defensive. And the policeman on the left, you can see they're leaning on the cart, he was super chill until they started acting weird. And once they started acting weird, he, of course, was kind of like, well, if they're uncomfortable, there's a reason. Coming out of an area where a lot of people bring illegal things out of, right? So it's an area where they're watched very carefully. And these two, they didn't have an altercation, but had a tense exchange because nothing was wrong. They weren't trying to do anything wrong, but they were acting like they were. And so just like take a deep breath, calm yourself down, have a moment of zen, and don't look suspicious. I'm also a fan coming through immigration of knowing your rights, know what you're allowed to import. I'm often going into countries on work visas. And so having all my paperwork and like a printed list off the government's website of here's what's allowed to come in with me, a carnet for all my camera gear, um, is excellent proof if someone does start to squawk and say, oh, I have to get my supervisor. Being able to show them something printed off their own website saying, no, here's what I'm legally allowed to bring in, very politely, but it's a very polite, effective reminder for that. And then again, just take a deep breath. At the end of the day, you'll get through customs and immigration, be able to relax, hopefully take a nap on a boat somewhere and enjoy your destination. So again, just running through what we talked about. Biggest thing I'd say is just be ready to explain anything that potentially could bring questions, and knowing your rights. Even with airports, I travel often on like media credentials, and so I'm allowed a different luggage allowance with media credentials. And having that printed out to show the airport desk, because my little Delta desk here in Missoula might not know their most up-to-date media rules. That's very helpful to remind them, like, no, hey, if I have this piece of paperwork, you don't charge me for that bag. And again, it's a super nice interaction, but it prevents it becoming a less nice interaction for everyone. And I had to include the Icelandic sheep. This was last fall in Iceland. This photo has gone everywhere on the fishing circles, just this little sheep running around who kept trying to ram her car for some reason. He was having a day, so. All right, so these next two sections, people safety and place safety, there's some overlap between the two, but this is just some of the common sense managing yourself in a new destination. And this doesn't really have to apply only to foreign exotic places. The biggest like physical assault I've ever had while traveling was in Austin, of people trying to steal my camera gear. So like places, you don't need to be in the Darien Gap for there to be a problem. You could be in Austin or Chicago or wherever. Something we all know, I always tell people like, be wary of evening adventures with people you don't know, right? Usually it's benign. I've had some great evenings in bars with people I don't know, but I watch my drink, right? I think this is something ladies often, we're much more attuned to it. Just we've been brought up that way of like, watch your drink, keep an eye on your personal surroundings, carry your keys in your hand, all these personal safety things. A lot of those carry over to travel too, right? So that's a lot of good things happen in bars, a lot of good things don't, not good things happen in bars. Nothing wrong with a hotel bar too. So if you're in a city that you don't know, you arrive late, you want to go get a drink and some tacos, don't feel like you have to go wandering into an area you might not know, which might not be the safest at night. Nothing wrong with just heading to the hotel bar and enjoying it there. I think your odds are a little bit better of being safe late at night, especially again, I'm typically traveling by myself. So woman traveling by herself with a lot of camera gear, I'm a fan of the hotel bar. Taxis. Talking about taxis and lines and queues. This was my transfer driver on the left in Medellin. I've worked there much of this spring, like April and May. I was in Medellin and in the Darien Gap. And the guy who organizes all the drivers, always sends a photo of the car that you can see the license plate. Because it's a very common scan there for people to pull up and say like, oh yeah, I'm your taxi. Come on, get in my car. And if people don't know that that's not their car, or they get in and are taken someplace they shouldn't be taken, So this is a safety thing. I'm going back to Colombia next spring with like a hosted trip. And so now it's myself and I'm responsible for 6 men. And this is part of the safety net I have in place for those guys is like using drivers who I know I can trust and I can communicate with on WhatsApp and ensure I'm putting my clients in a safe location. This photo on the right, this is a hotel bar in a town called Bahia Solano, like a coastal town in Colombia. Um, this is, in my mind, a prime example of like a good hotel bar. It was in an old house that was run by, used to be Pablo Escobar's, one of his many vacation homes. And we were there during the middle of like a big epic thunderstorm and the power went out. And so we had that surreal moment of like, we're sitting at Pablo Escobar's bar in the dark, drinking beer. And, we're able to like flip the phone upside down, put a water bottle on it, and that generates the light, and then just sit and have a nice beer. So there's your hotel bar plus adventure together. This photo is actually in Peru. I'm the person in the blue shirt kind of ducking. This was a first descent of the Madre de Dios, which is a Amazon River tributary. We did the first descent on stand-up paddleboard. This was, gosh, 2016, I think. It's been a while. But a lot of long days bumping in the back of this truck through the jungle. You can see one guy was actually smart enough to put his kayaking helmet on and just be like, screw this, I'm done. I need to protect my head. So some things you need to kind of mitigate risk, right? For me at this point in time for this assignment, this was a big job. It was worth the risk of dealing with the jungle and working. I'd never met any of these people before I went, working with a bunch of people I didn't know and spending 2 weeks in the jungle with them. It's ended up being a very successful story and a very successful trip. I did get dengue at the end of it, which would not recommend to anyone. But one thing we talked about a lot, this is another area where there's a lot of drug smuggling, right? And so the military is very active there. The drug smugglers are very active there. And there's a saying in Colombia called no dar papaya, which means don't give papaya. And essentially, it's don't make yourself a target. Don't look like something sweet, like someone would want to come and steal what you have or take what you have. So here I traveled with my cameras in the bag. Anytime we were around like sketchy situations, and I missed some photos that way. Yeah, but the camera in a dry bag just looks like another piece of whitewater gear. And it does not look like a very expensive camera sitting there someone might want to steal. So being smart as travelers and being able to kind of mitigate our own risk again through that and read the situation goes far. Mitigating risk can be close to home as well. This is in near Bozeman, Montana. So like 3 hours from where I'm sitting right now. And a friend and his dog fishing. Marley, the dog, obviously is on an ice shelf. And Jake is casting. This was about 10 or 12 degrees here and very windy. So as you can imagine, it's miserable. But risk management for us, we'd fish for 20 minutes and then go sit in the truck for 10 and warm up. So being able to really stay warm and stay cool. And balance our temperature without getting too sweaty in the truck and getting too cold in the water. That for us was our risk management of the day. Um, and, oh, um, and then like making friends with locals, finding good trusted locals here. These are two of our fishing guides in Colombia, the guys on the left. And the first 2 or 3 days, they just had bad clients before, really did not want anything to do with our group. And we put some music on, we danced in the boat, we hung out, and then obviously everyone kind of relaxed and we had so much fun. This was such a good group, but the week did not start out all smiley vibes. It started out with kind of very guarded. And so just taking the time to develop relationships with trusted locals will serve you very well in the future. And again, just running over everything, had to include the photo of the Argentine asado. Again, research. We talked about research earlier in regards to packing. Learning parts of town also is research, right? And learning some of the rules of the country where you're going, planning your transit options. One thing I didn't mention, if you're on a sidewalk, I always switch my bag that I'm carrying to the inside of the sidewalk. It's much easier. So not the street side, like the building side. It's much more difficult for someone to steal a bag or steal something out of your bag if it's not street side. Otherwise, it's especially in Central and South America, it's very easy for people to come by on like a motorcycle and just slip that right off your shoulder. And again, no dark papaya. That falls under that, right? Like, don't make something easy to steal. there's a saying in Mexico, if you make something easy to steal, it deserves to be stolen. So just pay attention to your goods. And that kind of food, drink safety, it comes back to, not getting drugged and all that stuff, but also not drinking enough that you leave your bag in a bar or something. Like enjoy the drinks, by all means, enjoy the local food and drink, but don't lose track of your surroundings and your gear as well. And again, location safety, like I said, this kind of overlaps. This is Comuna 13 in Medellin. Very famous area. It's pretty touristy now, but it's really fun to go visit. And here, as in many places in the US, actually now, I don't like to use my cell phone on the street. If I need to make a call, if I need to look on a map or something, I step into a shop or a cafe. It's very, very easy for people to walk by and steal a phone out of someone's hand. I saw it happen here in Montana several months ago. So again, be aware of your surroundings. Don't make yourself a target. This is a hotel room. This is actually that lodge in Bolivia. Very comfortable hotel room. Here, I did not have to worry about kind of hotel room safety, right? Because we're in the middle of the jungle. Everyone knows each other. I'm there with a bunch of fishing guides. If I'm staying in a hotel in an area that is not great, I often travel with like a metal wedge that I can just stick under the door, wedge it, and then it has a little screw that drives down, and so it wedges well into there. And I've actually had 2 different times someone come and try and kick in a door, and that wedge has stopped the door from being kicked in. So I'm a fan of that. I use it 20% of the time that I travel. It's not something I use everywhere, but it's a really nice little safety feature. It's easy to do. Just, plop it in the door and then I sleep much better. Um, this is a little airport in Colombia, and the pilot, who's the gentleman with his arms extended in the yellow vest, is checking everyone's passports and throwing a fit about some passports and actually tried to confiscate 2 passports, even though we were in an internal flight in Colombia. So technically, we were not crossing any borders. Um, this was a good reminder for me. I always carry copies of my passport hidden in every bag. A lot of luggage will have like a zip on the inside, and you can hide it in a liner there. They don't need to be color copies. Black and white copy will work in a pinch. I also keep copies of my passport in the cloud and make sure that family and friends have links to those. So if something happens, if it passport gets confiscated here, or if it gets lost or something, it's still gonna be a pain, right? A lost passport there's no way around it. It's a pain, but I'll at least be able to have some kind of identification readily accessible. Um, I also, most places, this is northern Russia, a place called the Pnoy River where I worked for a season as a fishing guide. I travel with a dummy wallet and keep money and cards separate. On this trip, coming out of working a season in Russia, this is a part of Russia where they don't get many tourists. It's near Polyarny, which is the headquarters of their Northern Fleet. It's near Murmansk, so it's like Americans are not a common sight. And on the airport, getting ready to leave the country at the end of the season, I was detained and then asked to bribe my way out of the country. And luckily, I had like most of my tip money from the season, because I worked mostly for tips, hidden at the bottom of my bag. And the only cash I had in my wallet was all the cash I had, which was a couple $100s. And so when it came to a very unpleasant interaction with, hey, you have to bribe or we're going to like detain you and you'll go away, I could, kind of play dramatic and say, this is all the cash I have, take it, when it's really was not all the cash I had. And it's not a sophisticated enough airport where they have x-ray for bags. So being able to have like a dummy wallet, keeping money separate can help you. That's an extreme situation, obviously. But if you get held up and someone's asking for your wallet, having a dummy wallet with like library cards or old expired cards can be a great way to hand them something that looks and feels like a wallet. They're probably not going to sit there and go through your wallet and look in expiration dates on cards. So I always divide it up. My rule of thumb is 3 places. I want money in 3 places, at least 2 different bags. So if something gets stolen, I'll at least have enough money to deal with the situation, right? Med kit. This is called a moturo. This is a very big catfish in the Amazon that we do fish for. He's got a fly in his mouth. But I always travel with a med kit and have undergone reasonable, actually, like military tactical courses on emergency medicine. So carry a med kit, carry a tourniquet, carry a suture kit. Even if you don't do sutures, I would recommend carrying a suture kit and like an IV kit, because a lot of places will reuse needles. So being able to hand them a pack and say, no, use this needle to sew me up, please. Um, for obvious reasons is a good thing, right? You don't want to be sharing needles with many different unknown people. So sometimes it's something that smells like a hangnail for someone else at the lodge, but I literally use a med kit every trip I go on. A great ad for me has been like a multi-tool, a SOG multi-tool. Leatherman's another great brand. I've I've had to perform minor surgery on myself, digging stuff out from under skin using that tool. And so being able to have something like that along is awesome. And I think everyone who's doing any kind of adventure travel, it's well worth doing like a quick emergency medicine course or wilderness medicine course, however in-depth you want to go with that. Having some first aid knowledge will help you sleep better, but also likely come in handy at some point. And again, just don't get complacent. I think any of us who have been there will recognize this is Florence, Italy. I saw more people getting robbed, like petty theft here in Florence than I have in many third world countries where you would think it would be a bigger problem. Like I said, I've had my biggest injury on the job in Austin, of all places. And so I would just say, traveling, it's easy for us to say, oh yeah, I'm in a place, maybe there's a lot of people who look like me or kind of the same uh, lifestyle, and just feel a little bit too relaxed. Enjoy your trip. Don't be afraid. But don't be dumb either. That's always good advice, I think. So again, just kind of running through, keep your goods safe, use basic common sense. One thing I didn't talk about is a lot of places I'll either like, if I have a backpack sitting next to me at a cafe, I'll stick a leg through one of the backpack straps or scoot the chair up so one of the chair legs goes through that backpack strap, just to make it a little bit harder for someone to walk by and take that. Passport copies, I can't harp on that enough. Good tour operators, good lodge operators will also ask to have this on file. I know many who don't, but it's a great practice for them to gather passport copies for other clients. Dummy wallets are another big one. State Department also has a great registration program. I don't do it for every trip, but places where I'm going to countries which there potentially could be a problem. I do a fair bit of work in the Middle East, and especially lately, if I'm going to a country where it's advised Americans don't travel or other things are going on, I'll register with the State Department. So if things happened, they at least know where I'm at. They know I'm in that country and I would in theory be on the list to be looked for. And then the fun. This is the fun end of it. For me, a lot of what I enjoy about work is meeting people. This is down in Argentina last February. The guy on the left is actually a Hungarian count. He's fantastic, very big personality. And then the guy on the right was one of our fishing guides. And just being able to sit around, we fished very hard, but we could sit around in these huts at lunch and just like they would smoke cigars and we'd drink one and hang out. And that, to me, the hang is almost more memorable than often the job itself, the activity. I've been able to make some of the best friends traveling. This is a fishing guide in Belize who's a great friend. I'll be fishing with him this time next week, actually. And we were able to take like a guide's day off and just go whack through the mangroves and try something we'd never take a client to do, a style of fishing we would never take a client to do. But I've developed a relationship enough with him where we're like, let's go do something dumb and just see what happens. And like, obviously we were having fun, right? Michael's very, very smiley in that photo. Again, my work's weird. I'm typically the only female in lodges filled with men, right? A lot of fishing is male dominated. We're seeing more women. But these fishing guides, this is in Bristol Bay, Alaska. This is Bristol Bay Lodge is the name of the lodge. The guides at the main lodge started to develop some camaraderie. We had a lot of fun. I flew to an out lodge, like a different camp for several days. When I came back to the main lodge, the guys grabbed me after dinner and said, hey, we have something really cool to show you. We've got to show you this. They were like little kids. They're so excited. And so we went out to look at the boats and they had rigged this they called it a guide desk, right? This is kind of all the different necessities a fishing guide working in Alaska would need. So they've got alcohol and apples and of course bug spray and a license book, and he's tying flies and all these inherently like fishing guide activities. They had built this desk. That wooden chunk was not there because they wanted a photo of it. Like they were so excited to have a photographer in camp. Um, and just developing relationships with the folks who you meet traveling yields so much benefit. For me, obviously, as a photographer, that's how you get these cool pictures where it's the guys are bought into the process, right? I'm not sticking a camera in their face and saying like, "Hey, let me take your picture." It's very much like a team effort, and that way they enjoy it too. It makes for so much better photos, and I think just a much better travel experience. It's not always fun. This was it's an arm of actually one of the most famous flanglers in the world, a guy named Oliver White. And this was a shoot in French Polynesia, big commercial shoot for a brand called Costa Sunglasses, like famous sunglasses brand. And Oliver fell on coral and ended up whacking his arm pretty good. Um, I did the same. I ended up cutting my feet on coral badly enough that by the time we left, my foot was so swollen I couldn't fit into these flip-flops, and was that person walking barefoot through LAX holding my flip-flops. Would not recommend. I actually got stopped by security and had to explain to them, like, no, I'm sorry, here's, my feet were gross at that point. Like they're a mess. I was like, here's what's happening. I have my shoes, I just can't put them on. And the security guy, it turned out, was a fisherman. And so he's like, you've been doing what? Where? And we talked fishing, and then he gave me a ride to my gate. Like being able to just have the stories when things go wrong are sometimes as memorable, if not more memorable, than when things go right. I actually had a magazine editor ask me last year to write a feature story on like what goes wrong on shoots and what goes wrong on fishing trips. And I was so excited about it because most editors want the glory side of it, right? That's a lot of media. It's either doom and gloom or you want kind of a romanticized version of things. And having this editor be like, tell the nitty gritty, tell it like it is, tell us the horrible stuff. I was so excited about that because things do go wrong. It happens. And then just having a little fun. This is a drift boat in Montana. We fish out of these boats. Most of them do not have big googly eyes and a mustache. Most of them look much more professional. But this is a very seasoned guide who put these on his boat. And every time this boat goes through rapids or any kind of rough water, you can imagine those eyes just kind of do this. And so it's very fun to see this boat come bopping down the river. And again, it's a guy he's a professional. He has every right to look as professional as he wants, but he's chosen to have a little bit of fun with his life, which makes him really fun to be around. And one big kind of lead behind with this is don't be scared off about travel. Like, yeah, a lot of stuff can go wrong. A lot of stuff can go right. Also, this was the end of that Peru stand-up paddleboard first descent. We were on our second to last day. We found a hot spring in the jungle and took our first semi-bath in 2.5 weeks. I was super sick with dengue at this point. Like it was a miserable experience for all of us. No one there obviously looks like we're having a lot of fun, but looking back on it, it was an epic time. So like embrace the suck is a military saying that we still say a lot, of like just enjoy the less fun part of it because it does make for really good stories. And the odds of something serious happening, regardless of where you're going, are pretty minimal. I spend a reasonable amount of time by State Department stats, like the top 10 most dangerous countries in the world by homicide rate, and have not had significant issues. So just be smart, dot your I's, cross your T's, and then enjoy the process. And again, I won't read through all these, but first one would be the most important. Like it is supposed to be fun. It's not gonna be fun all the time. Try and appreciate those moments when it's not. One thing I did not talk about, airport lounges. That's a whole different seminar. And rules are changing all the time. But if you can get a credit card or get access through your airline lounges make long flights much, much better. And then day hotels. This is something I've used in the past year or so traveling. If I land somewhere, going down to Medellin, for example, flying from Montana, I cannot get anywhere easily internationally. And so I spent a day basically flying down to Miami, landed at 9 a.m., I think, or 10 a.m. And my flight to Medellin left that afternoon at 6 p.m. Instead of staying in Miami Airport for 9 hours, it's not my favorite airport. I was able to book a hotel nearby for 6 hours for like $100, which for me to be able to shower and sleep, well worth the money. So it's really worth checking out day hotels if you have daytime layovers. And again, just don't be scared off. Do your research, be smart, but don't be scared off. And that's it. Um, Judy, I don't know if you have a process for Q&A, but happy to answer any that come across.
Yay! Thank you, Jess. That was amazing.
Okay.
I actually have a couple questions for you. So, how do you stay updated, like on the places that you're traveling, as far as any health guidelines or safety concerns? Like, is there any tools that you use that you check or make sure that you're hitting?
It's a great question. I typically will check all the obvious sites like CDC. I'll check the whatever country I'm going to, their government sites, because they'll often have conflicting advice with our own CDC sites. So I try and look at three minimum sources per the country and then make a decision based off that. I do keep most of my immunizations up to date just because I get last minute calls to go places. Um, but yeah, I think for that kind of thing, there's so much information on the web, but multiple source is key.
Does anyone else have questions? You can unmute yourself and kind of jump in or drop it in the chat. Or I could keep asking questions too. That works.
I can ask a question, Jess.
Yeah, go
I'm
for
very
it.
curious. So are when you're doing these fishing trips, are you hosting them like Russia? I'm just like, wait, did you just bring a group with you, or or
It,
you're hosting Russians? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of
yeah,
crazy.
no,
Uh,
it varies. Oh, sorry.
yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I got my question out.
Um, Multiple streams of income, right? Like that's key for anyone who owns a business. So it varies. I through my business right now help lodges manage. Like I consult and we'll go in and work with them either on marketing or lodge ops. And so that season in Russia, it was 2012. So that was a while ago. But I was there working as the assistant manager. So I was in charge of the fly fishing, like the guide team, and then all of the helicopter logistics, and kind of hostessing, which was fascinating. That camp was owned by a guy who sat, is Medvedev at the time, sat on his cabinet. And so we got a lot of Russian politicians coming through, which is fascinating. Really interesting cultural experience.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
you would just speak English, try to best, or like,
Yeah, I picked up decent Russian while I was there. That, of course, like it's not something we speak in Montana at all.
uh-huh.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that has gone by the wayside. I can still like curse and count to 10. We gambled a
Ah.
lot in camp, that as fishing guides do, you know. So it's like I can tell someone how to land a fish and curse and count to 10, but that's about it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then I do some hosted travel as well, but a lot of my work is like on contract with lodges to go in and do photo shoots for
Oh,
marketing.
okay.
And so like I have a couple months in Argentina coming up. During those 2 months, I have two hosted trips with clients from the US. There's one Irish guy randomly who I think will be fun, who I bring down there with me to a place that I visited before, right? So I can then facilitate and help them. And then once I'm done with the hosted trips, I go into a couple different lodges to shoot marketing material.
Hmm. Cool. Well, thank you.
Yeah,
That's fun.
it's chaotic but fun.
How much does like that Bolivian fish weigh? Like that thing is huge.
That one of the first was probably, we didn't weigh it. I bet it was close to 30.
Okay.
Uh, they're fun. That fishery that was a hella fishing program. So like a really unique, um, we went in after all their client wakes were done and we were able to fish water. Like no one had fished unless the local population had. No one had fished that water ever. And so to be
Wow,
like the first people to be able to fish that and really check it out, it was special.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Kat just put in the chat, are there certain countries you'd recommend for beginner travelers? And
Mm.
what has been your favorite places to travel to?
Oh, it's such a hard question. Um, Kat, I had really good experience on that trip in Italy, in Florence. I also did some of my early travel by myself. I got a job at 17 in Sweden and moved to Sweden by myself. felt super safe. I had not traveled before then. I don't come from a family of travelers. So picking up by myself and moving to Sweden was terrifying at 17. Um, Europe in general seems to be really pleasant to travel in. I would like to do more. Most of my travels kind of dictated by work, so I've not done much of like mainland Europe. But Italy was fantastic and very easy to navigate. The Nordic countries, again, have had great experience in Sweden. It's a little bit further, but I would say for like first time travel, for me, those are probably more of a positive experience than like Mexico, right? A lot of Americans will go to Mexico early on for a first international trip because it's close. And I love Mexico. Mexico's amazing, but have also had some issues there with customs. My last trip there had a nightmare with customs. So there are different issues with every country. My favorite country, gosh, it's a hard one. I really love Argentina. I'm finding ways to work down there more. And I was able to go February before last to Lesotho, which is a small country in South Africa. Um, Very rural, very rugged. It's extremely mountainous. It's gorgeous. It reminded me of Montana in places. And stay with some locals. I was able to like participate in a horse or won a goat in a horse race randomly. And so left the goat with the guy who lent me his horse. I was a horse kid growing up. Left the goat with the guy who like lent me his horse to run the race in. And so that was special just because we were staying with locals, right? It was very like not a 5-star accommodation at all, probably a 1-star, but the people made it like a 10-star.
I have a kind of a question, but maybe just refresh my memory. I believe at the show this last year, you were on a panel and you mentioned something about a shark biting your bag. Is that right? Was that you? I was
That
trying
was
to sit
me,
here and
yeah.
think about that, and I was like, can you tell us the story real quick?
Yeah. So the underwater housing, that blue box that is the bane of my existence, going through customs that we talked about, was on a shoot in Samoa for Yeti coolers. So again, like another big brand, high pressure shoot. Um, and I had the underwater housing with me and got in the water. We had horrible weather. There was a big storm coming through in the Apalima Strait, which is the strait between Samoa and the two islands of Samoa, and hopped in the water really quickly to shoot like in between squalls, basically, and did not grab my mask and my flippers, which are typically it's like mask, snorkel, flippers if I'm in the water shooting. I was stupid, live and learn, and did not. And so I was backed away from the boat, shooting back at the boat, and all of a sudden the water kind of swirled under me. There was this big displacement of water beneath me, and I got bumped, like something just shoved me. Um, and heard this really loud, like nails on a chalkboard, but deeper, this weird scraping noise. And all of a sudden, all the local guys on the boat start yelling. And, my brain is like slowly, too slowly, catching up to what's happening. Um, and I just pointed the underwater camera housing down. It has that big dome on the top, pointed it down and held the shutter. And I was like, well, if I die, at least this thing floats. So they'll be able to capture this and like maybe get a good picture out of it. I don't know. Um, but the shark never, she did not, she was not being aggressive. She was just being curious. So she had wanted me, she would have had me, but she came up and like now the underwater housing. I ran into a NOAA um, research vessel there in that town later on, I think 2 days later. Turns out they had a shark research vessel there because there are so many sharks in this strait. And would have been great to know. But was able to show him the photo. He's like, oh yeah, that's a really big tiger shark. I hope you weren't in the water. And I was just like, yeah, sorry. Luckily I was able like flight or fight, I guess. And I kind of like froze and then luckily kept presence of mind to like not panic and thrash back to the boat. I just kind of like, we'll just bob over back to the boat and get out. And the shark didn't really come back around. So now that underwater housing, they make much fancier models now, but that one has bite marks on it. I'm like, that's going to be with me my whole career. I can't lose that thing now.
It's
It's
a badge of honor.
a badge of honor. No, and stuff does go wrong, right? Like I was in a helicopter crash that season in Russia, and ended up getting banged up really. I had broken ribs, broken collarbone, I messed my back up. Judy, we were just talking, I just had spine surgery now 12 years later because of that injury. So like stuff does happen. Um, I still get in a ton of helicopters every year, and it's like it's an odds game, right? I figure one and done, hopefully I should be good to go. So I think if we're just pragmatic and it's determining for each individual what's acceptable risk, right? Because that barometer is going to be very different for everyone.
Absolutely. Does anyone else have any questions before we wrap up?
I do. Hey guys. Hey Jess.
Hey, Renee.
Hopefully I'll see you in Orlando soon.
Oh, awesome. All right.
I
I love
know.
that.
Yeah. I'm up on the North Fork. But hey, I have a question.
Fantastic.
And I just thought about this because I just got back from an international trip
Yeah.
about antibiotics, and
Mm.
I need to take some with me. And my doctor is very hesitant to give me a prescription. So I thought, do you travel with them? And if so, what's your go-to antibiotic, whether it be for, getting cut on the coral, or putting like I did, put a steelhead hook through my bicep, and
Oh,
good
no.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah. The tetanus shot, check.
Good for
Um,
you. Oh,
check. Tetanus shot every year, no matter if I need it or not.
yep,
But yeah, I was just kind of curious if what you travel with, or what you've used that you were like, thank God I have it.
definitely. My issue's been the same that you've noted, is it's really hard to get a doctor to prescribe. I've talked to several like military friends, and they're like, yeah, who are medics. They say, I always travel with these 3 different antibiotics. I'm like, well, for those of us who don't have a family member or a military connection to write us scripts, um, I've been able to get one prescribed like a year, basically. And it's through my gynecologist. I just tell her, like, you know what I do for work. Um, if something happens, I'd like to have this. And bless her heart, she's a doctor here in Missoula, and she's like, I get it. I'll prescribe you something. And I usually carry Cipro with me.
Yeah, Cipro.
Obviously,
Okay.
it's not going to deal with everything. But that's been what I've ended up with as like having the most coverage per my medical friends.
Yeah.
Imperfect. I would love to have 3 different ones to cover every little bit, but I always figure at least that's better than nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I'm going to be spending three weeks in Christmas Island. And so if
Oh,
I
good
get
for
cut on
you.
the coral, I mean, I'm toast.
Totally.
I can't
Yeah,
even go to a rural clinic and get anything. So,
definitely
uh,
carry. And if you feel free to, if I can help at all with prep for that, feel free to shoot me
yeah.
notes.
No, I've been 4 times, but just not
Oh,
three
good.
weeks.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
I pack about 2 sets of clothing and a whole suitcase full of snacks.
perfect. Yeah. That's a big,
I'm
especially,
not joking.
yeah, no, in environments like that,
Yeah,
I'm
it
going to
is.
Belize next week for a shoot, and it's like at least 2 electrolyte packets a day.
Yeah,
I'm big on staying up on electrolytes, and then like the vitamins and all the things that makes a big
yeah.
difference. And having those good snacks it's clutch. That's a good move
And I've always learned too, when you're in fourth world countries, you never get sick off a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
for sure.
Ever.
It's hard to beat.
Hard to beat. Thanks so much. Appreciate
Of
it. We'll
course.
see
Thanks
ya.
for coming.
Hey,
Can I say something to Renee?
Sure. Yeah, jump
you've
on in.
gotten
Um,
sick.
there is a hospital in Christmas Island, and they have antibiotics.
Where is
Oh,
it? Over by Captain Cook, or what side of the island is it on?
No, it's off where most of the housing is, and it's called
Gotcha. So
London.
like by the villages and the Curie House and
Yeah, it's in London.
yeah. Oh, it's in London. Okay. Hey, that's just when I was there. I didn't go. I think I missed 2 years. So yeah, so that's new. That's good to know.
nice.
Oh,
Yeah, when you
it's an old one.
when you
It's a
fish in the
clinic.
outback, that coral, I don't care what shoes you bring, man, it's nasty.
Absolutely.
All
All
right,
right.
guys. I think we're gonna wrap it up. Oh wait, Jared, are you trying to flag me
Yes, I
down?
didn't realize I was on mute. But Jess, like how do you go about choosing your gear? Like there's so many options out
Mm.
there. Do you go off of like warranty, word of mouth from other people, sponsors? Like I imagine you have some sponsorships out there, all that fun stuff. So and you had a variety of different types of gear too, of different brands. So I was just wondering how you go about choosing.
Definitely. A lot of it is sponsorships and like who will send me stuff for free.
Mhm.
Honestly, I mean I always laugh when I'm at these lodges because they're not cheap to go to. And I'm always there in like a working capacity, and like I'm typically wearing like this is Argentina with some mate. Um, I'm wearing the Orvis stuff because it was left over from an Orvis photo shoot, and they said, "Oh yeah, keep it." So that typically is how my stuff is decided. Fishing gear, obviously, and camera gear, I get a bit more picky. I typically pay like pro deal price, but I pay for all my camera gear because I know what I want to get the job done. But yeah, a lot of the soft goods, a lot of the travel and like clothing and layers and stuff is partnerships.
Cool.
Yeah, very thankful for them.
That's awesome.
Awesome, guys. We're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for being here, Jess. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
If you still have time, can you stick around for just a couple more minutes while
Absolutely.
everyone else leaves? As I kick everyone else out, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jess.
Thanks. See ya.
Thank you.
Thank you.